With the new X series of scratch-offs from the New York Lottery, you can multiply your winnings up to 100 times. The X series from the New York Lottery, it's a better way to multiply. You must be 18 years or older to purchase. Please play responsibly. On this week's episode of Bills Pod Squad, NFL Network analytics expert Cynthia Frelund joins me to help break down everything you need to know about the NFL draft. Cynthia shares some prospects that could fit in Buffalo and what she would do with the 30th overall pick. Cynthia also shares how her Bills fandom began and why she may need to invest in a pair of snow pants. All that and more as Bills Pod Squad gets started right now. Welcome into this week's episode of Bills Pod Squad presented by the New York Lottery. Maddy Glab here is your host as we are so close to meeting our newest Buffalo Bills from the 2021 draft. It all begins Thursday night at 8 o'clock on ESPN, ABC, and NFL Network. To help me break down, preview the draft, and explain how it all relates to the Buffalo Bills, I've got NFL Network analytics expert Cynthia Frelund on with us today. Cynthia, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I know this is like ticking time as we count down the hours until the NFL draft begins. Everybody's just cramming all the info in their brain at this point, like osmosis, to learn about all of these prospects. I'm like, let me just go to sleep next to 20 pages of paper about these prospects and maybe I'll learn a little bit more.
It's a good way to do it as a new Bills fan, because, in the offseason, I obviously adopted Bills Mafia as my new team. I abandoned my home state team because they're ridiculous. And now I'm fully in Bills Mafia. So, look, picking at 30 we got a lot of time to wait. It's going to be a long Thursday night.
You know what? Picking at 30. Yeah, it's going to be close to midnight. And I'm like, it would be the year where we're picking at 30 and we trade out of the first round and everybody's just hanging out on the first night just to trade out of the first round to be one of the first picks on day 2. But we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, so much can happen before number 30 with 29 picks going before you. I'm just excited to see how it all unfolds. I mean, there should be quite a few surprises in this NFL draft. But to start it off, I wanted to throw some rapid fire questions at you. I know you know these prospects very well. And so I'd hope you educate some of our fans, listeners, on people who maybe won't be a part of the Buffalo Bills team in 2021, but some prospects and players to look out for in the NFL who could ball out in their rookie season. So based on the guys that you have studied, who is your best overall athlete?
Kyle Pitts. So he's a tight end out of Florida. To me, he's the most likely to become within 3 seasons an all-pro. So highest probability of any position that includes the quarterback. So for me, all around Kyle Pitts special, probably the one that we talk about several years from now going to Canton, most likely.
I wonder how early he's going to go. He could go pretty early. I mean, definitely top 10, top 7, probably. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I hope he doesn't go to a Miami Dolphins team because that would definitely up their offense. And Bills fans just don't need that right now. We
don't need that. Yeah, we don't need that. Bills fans.
Yeah. We want another AFC's title. We don't need that right now. But who is the biggest surprise in this class, you would say?
Ooh, okay. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. To me, biggest surprise usually be like a guy in the 5th round, but I'm going to pick a running back that's going to be a surprise because everyone's talking about Najee Harris or Travis Etienne. I think Javonte Williams, who's a running back out of UNC, number one, every single scout that I've spoken to, when I ask an informal survey, who's your favorite person to interview? Just who did you get along with best? Literally everyone has said Javonte Williams. So It's been really interesting that they like him so much and they think he's just he's got the it factor. So for me, he might be one of those guys like Alvin Kamara. We don't know what we're looking at here. Is he going to be good or not? And then you're all of a sudden you're yep, he's a stud. So Javonte Williams, people don't sleep on him.
A North Carolina guy, Javonte Williams. He's got he had a pretty good running backs coach that I knew from my time at the University of Tennessee. So would love to see how he does. We also have a former UNC running back on our Bills team, Antonio Williams, who did get some playing time this past year. He spent a lot of time on the practice squad, but it'll be cool to see him compete for a job in this training camp. But whose speed do you think will translate to the field most? in this year's draft?
So I think that's interesting. That's a great question. So when I think speed, I either think corner or I think wide receiver. And I think Jamar Chase out of LSU, his actual, like when I measured it on the field after, he's like a catch and run guy. So when you caught it, when he burst after the yards after the catch, his speed there was the fastest that I measured in this whole class of the wide receivers. Now on the cornerback end, JC Horn is a nasty little, he's got really long arms and he's really speedy too. So between the two of them, it's going to be really interesting. But I'm just going to go with, I'll probably keep it. Obviously now I'm second guessing myself because Jalen Waddle's really fast too, but I'm going to stick with Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase. Yeah. What a threat he is. This class for wide receivers is just crazy again this year. Oh my gosh. I feel like now, like every year it's going to be like, it's another great wide receiver class. All these crazy wide receivers are just coming out of these, Power 5 schools.
Hey, colleges are throwing the ball more. So it's kind of supply and demand. If they need more people to catch balls, they're going to cultivate better wide receivers. And we'll see that translate into our game at our level.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, look at the Buffalo Bills. They had plenty of guys to throw to. They didn't necessarily need to draft one in the first round last year because we traded that pick away for Stephon Diggs, who completely balled out. But you can't go wrong with a lot of wide receivers. You can't go wrong with playing at 10 personnel, 11 personnel with a quarterback who can just air it out and hit his targets. Who is your favorite prospect in this year's draft? That's probably a hard one too.
That's a hard one because most seasons I'll go to the combine and I'll meet a few and I'm getting to the age now where I could be their mom. So I feel a little paternal towards one of them. Not quite there yet, but I'm getting closer to that. But when I watch film and I think someone who's kind of like an interesting one that people seem to like, it's got to be that nice combination. I usually I really loved Isaiah Simmons last year out of Clemson. He went to the Cardinals. I'm not going to lie. I like Greg Newsome. He's a corner out of Northwestern. I went to Northwestern, so not with him, obviously, because I'm ancient.
You're so young, Cynthia.
I couldn't be his mother yet. We're getting there though. But I think he, to me, watching him on film, he seems like he's got a nice it factor. It'd be cool to see him end up someplace like maybe the Bears, which sort of stay in Chicago. He can obviously play in the cold. It just, he's one that I really like it. I like saying the name Kwity Paye a lot too, who's an edge rusher from Michigan, but I don't know him. I like watching his film, of course, but Kwity Paye is fun to say. Same with Azeez Ojulari, who could be a pick for the Bills. Both of those could be a pick for the Bills.
Yeah, Azeez Ojulari, Greg Newsome. I mean, I'm thinking defense here at number 30. Those guys could be great fits, but will they be on the board? Who the heck knows? I mean, those are some great players that could fly off the board in the late 20s, early 20s. Who do you think could contend for the Offensive Rookie of the Year award?
It's going to be between Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase. I don't know. Obviously, quarterback is an easy win here with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, both presumable starters based on all the rumors we're hearing. You don't know when you get to that Justin Fields, Trey Lance situation. It seems like they're going to drop, Jimmy Garoppolo still is in the 49ers. So so I guess at the end of the day, it's probably most likely to be Trevor Lawrence. But for me, I'd rather see the Pitts or maybe even all these people, Devontae Smith, a wide receiver out of Alabama, who obviously won the Heisman Trophy. Everyone's saying he's too undersized and not blah, blah, blah. I'm I kind of would like to see him win it too, just because it's stop worrying about how big he is. He's gonna be fun.
Don't worry about his hand size. He'll catch the football. He'll be fine.
We've seen him do it. He can do it. It's not like dunking it's not like trying to get me to dunk a basketball. It's never happening. Maybe if you give me a trampoline, but we've seen him do it. He knows how to do it.
I think you could do it too. Who do you think could contend for the Defensive Rookie of the Year award?
So it'll depend a little bit about the defensive class is really interesting. It's not as deep as we've seen in other years. I do think that it will depend on kind of where people end up. I think Jalen Phillips, people are, when you watch his film, he's out of Miami, he's an edge rusher. He's up there. Kwity Paye could be up there. Kwity Paye is a little raw, so it would depend on if he's in a system where he can succeed or not. But one of these corners could also be pretty gnarly too. Whoever ends up on the Cowboys have a really young secondary. So if you get a guy who's a real ball hawk and can, crush some interceptions. Like that could be an interesting one too, because usually you think of an edge rusher or a real, like someone who's that they're most likely to win. Right. And we've seen that in that Chase Young, like we have those examples. The recency bias is kind of influencing us. So, I guess to me, maybe this year it could be a corner. It could be my favorite corner in this one is Patrick Surtain. He's great, but you never know. It really depends where people end up, if they play zone, if they play man, so it's most likely to be an edge rusher, but so maybe Jalen Phillips or maybe dark horse Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, that'll be also interesting to see, because this edge rusher class is different than it has been in the past couple of years. I mean, like you said, Chase Young, but there is no Chase Young in this year's NFL draft. Like the edge rushers, like you've explained before when we've had conversations, it's more of raw talent. There is depth there, but it's kind of a roll your dice type of depth, depending on how do you fit in the system. Can you be developed by the coaching staff, etc. But we'll get into all of that. But I wanted to ask you, I mean, you're an analytics person. So when it comes to doing prep for the NFL draft, how are you doing these evaluations? How are you kind of studying up about these prospects and putting it into your formulas to determine, okay, these players fit here, or here's what my mock draft looks like?
So I do it a little bit different, because when I'm evaluating the players, I take their resume. So I take computer vision, which measures things. It kind of looks like a telestrator, like circles and lines, and it measures actual distances people are away from each other, actual speeds, what we've seen on the field, configurations. I can factor in level of competition, right? Because that it does matter who you're playing against and who also is on your team. I mean, Mac Jones had a way better situation having Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, that whole O-line, et cetera, versus, Trey Lance, who had 17 starts and playing in a division where you don't know many of the other people who they're playing with and who he's playing with. So it's hard to dedupe those things. But what you try to do is you take all of their known resume points that are measured from actual things. So it's not really my input, right? It's my measurements, and everything we're measuring, we create the things to measure. Then you look at historical reference points. Who are they? Who's the lookalike? And not just the good lookalike. You always see people being like, he's the next Patrick Mahomes. No, he's not. Like that's not, it may be in the right fit, in the right system, and they're cultivating the right people. Maybe you can be more like Patrick Mahomes, but you have to look at what's going, I mean, Bills fans know this like easily. Josh Allen, he had raw talent, but he had to have the right people around him, the right person teaching him and orchestrating the offense. And by the way, it took a little bit. It wasn't automatic in that first season. So you have to have the right set of circumstances. So what you're trying to do is you take what you know about the players, you take a historical reference, and you find things that are lookalikes, and then you place them in situations. It's going to be a really big problem for whomever plays quarterback for the Jets. I don't care if it's a rookie or a vet or anyone. Their O-line is terrifying. Yes. I didn't know a better word, so I just use that look. So point being, that's going to be a much harder situation to succeed than in San Francisco, when, by the way, they've got one of the best left tackles. They signed a center who had played for the Falcons, who's very experienced and can help, and they've got a really strong run game. So going to help you out a lot there. And by the way, George Kittle, he's pretty good. Just a thought. So at the end of the day, it's system and fit. And then you try to take the resumes of the prospects and fit them where they are, so you can project out the results in 2021 and going forward.
I think that's so cool, because it's like a full story. You're not just like looking at one or two things or honing in on just one thing and making your decision based on X. You're looking at X, Y, Z, and everything that goes along with that. So I think that's so cool how you can put it in models and kind of figure out, all right, what's the best case scenario for this guy? What is his upside? What do we think he's going to do in his rookie season? Where is he going to fit best? I mean, it all makes so much sense. I can't even imagine how much work that probably is. But speaking about work and everything that you've been studying and all the prospects that you've been learning about, what are you going to be up to for the NFL draft? I mean, we're just a day away here, a couple days away here. It begins on Thursday. So what's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday going to look like for you?
So it's really cool. So Thursday, I'll do total access, which is after the draft. So during the draft, we sit and we watch it together, socially distanced, of course. And in case the truck goes down or something happens, then we'll be in the studio ready to go. we're doing, the NFL just announced a partnership with Clubhouse. So we'll be doing like from behind the scenes. We did it yesterday on Monday. That was a long one. It was fun. And then we'll be doing a Clubhouse during it, like from the green room, which is pretty cool. Screening room, which is pretty cool. And then TA, total access after the draft to break down everything that happens. Same thing on Friday, the same setup. And then Saturday, I'll actually be a part of the main broadcast, which is a really huge honor. And I'm pretty stoked. It's always fun on Saturday too, because that's the depth of the class, right? Those aren't the names that everybody knows, right? Those aren't the ones where we've talked about and then talked about again. These are some deeper polls.
So you've been studying like the top 100 and then
Keep
plus
going.
another 100.
Top 200. Let's go.
Keep going.
Keep
oh my
going.
gosh. Wow.
259 are going to be picked, and you got to know about 300, because the way the end of the draft works, a lot of times certain positions, they'll just know that team picking behind you, they're not going to draft them. So it's better for, they go undrafted and then they get signed like 15 minutes after the draft is over. So it's not just, it's not just the 259 there. We got a lot more to know, but it's good. I get paid to research fake things. It's amazing. Like it's great, right? Like
it's a whirlwind of a weekend, and it is like, I mean, everybody works crazy hours that weekend, but it's so fun because I think one of my favorite things is like watching these young men, their futures changing like before your eyes, in the blink of an eye. Like they're on an NFL team and everything they've prepared for and done has finally paid off. And so many of these guys have like such cool background stories. And I just think that's such a cool part of all this too. But since you've been covering this NFL draft for some time, do you have any like crazy stories just from covering the draft in your days?
The funny part is most of the stories I have come from, I also get a chance to work with some teams, and, we do some consulting or some, I help them create a structure to do their own analytics a little bit better, to think through things.
You're good at your job when you're helping teams with consulting. It's
fun. And sometimes in the Friday, I think my sweet spot is like Friday and early Saturday, because you already know, if a team doesn't know who they're picking in the first round and second round, like they all know. Like if they don't, then that's a problem. I've never met a team that doesn't know that. So, it's like the later round guys and like positional value, like, do we take the wide receiver or do we take the linebacker, et cetera, et cetera. It's really interesting stuff. So some of the more fun ones were, I get a chance to talk to these teams and we play little games about who's going to be successful or not. So, there was a O-line coach, he's no longer coaching in the league. He retired. He was also a Hall of Famer, and we would make bets as to which O-linemen were going to be good. And, it was, for snacks at the combine the next year. So, those are always the most fun texts. It's like, this guy's going to be terrible, or this guy's going to be great. You're just laughing, reading it. Like, you just like the old scouting, like the football guy, like take on all that stuff. It's really fun. So those are my favorite moments.
That's awesome. I love that. So this past year, I mean, you've been kind of talking about the Bills a decent amount on social media.
Listen, I'm a Bills
showing
fan
your
now.
love to the Bills. I just want to know where this all started, where this fandom started for the fans, Bills Mafia, and for this team that's on the rise with a pretty great scouting department and scouting staff and coaching staff.
So it started when I was at ESPN. My favorite coworker and my first producer ever, his name's Eddie Marlette. He is the biggest Bills fan on the planet. He actually just had a daughter, Maggie Marlette, very, very sweet. And she's the world's littlest Bills fan, at least for a few days, right? Like she's the latest Bills fan. So Maggie Marlette. So Eddie was just always a huge Bills fan. And I was always like, the only thing that Detroit has is, I'm not from Detroit, I'm from East Lansing, but the Red Wings. So we would always have talk about hockey, and not, we wouldn't talk on a certain night when they were playing each other and Jack Eichel, and we'd had this whole debate. But Eddie's like the salt of the earth human being, is like the quintessential Bills fan, like the kindest human being on the planet, hard worker. He is just exactly who you would, I don't know, this. He's just a great human. So that really was kind of the start, way back, I don't know, when I was at ESPN. And then I kind of evolved, because Bills fans are very vocal on Twitter, which pretty funny. I enjoy the banter. And then I got a chance to talk to your coach and your GM, and the amount of love that they have for the city, the people. I mean, Brandon Beane's like one of the most thoughtful human beings, like just really good people. And then all of a sudden things start to shift a little bit, right? Like you're like, oh, like there's so much, like they love this quarterback. They're putting, like people who try to make their people better are, who doesn't want to be like around that? So, eventually, and this working in this industry, like people become more than the team. So it's really a lot of the people, not from the fans to like the coach to the GM, like they just care and they're just good people. So you want to be around like that goodness. I've never met I also went to Boston College. So you got some like Boston College people in that defense. So,
Shout out Matt Milano.
Exactly. So it's like, it's one of those things. And I really I love your corner. So it's just been kind of like evolving over time, but it's really all started because of Eddie Marlette.
Wow, that's a great story. I love that. And I totally agree that it's more the people than it is the name. I grew up in Chicago and was born and raised to be a Chicago Bears fan. I didn't choose where I was born and raised. And sometimes Bills fans like get on my back and they're like, she's really a closet Bears fan. And I'm like, I mean, no, it changes so quickly because you get to know the people inside of the building and you get to know the coaching staff and you get to know Brandon and Sean and the players and their wives and their girlfriends. And like the people inside of One Bills Drive are just so great that as soon as you start to know them and their stories and their background, I'm like, no, I work for the Bills and I love the people inside of the building. So I'm going to cheer for the Bills as well. I'm not like still a closet Bears fan. And plus
I'm going through a table. Let's go.
Right?
I'm in. I love it.
The Bears aren't good right now. So they've also got that going for them.
No, I was still like, I didn't really want Tyrod Taylor to go because I liked Tyrod Taylor. I thought he was good. Like, and I remember watching that playoff game where they like need someone else to lose and everyone's like biting their nails, like so nervous. And it was just very sweet. Like I liked it. People who care, like Bills fans care. It's nice.
Yeah, the fan base is amazing. They're ride or die for this team. They've been there through the bad times. They are so excited that we're in the good times right now. And the fan base is like incredible when they are in person and in stadiums. So I cannot wait for that this year. But looking at the NFL draft and the opportunity that the Bills have in this draft, I mean, they have 7 picks. They have number 30 in the first round. How do you look at what they can do and accomplish in this NFL draft going in with not like huge holes on their roster? They filled all that in free agency. So they can kind of go into this thing thinking, all right, where do we need to add depth and who's the best available? So how do you look at that?
Depth, best available, and where can they take some smart like shots for the future? Like you should probably always be updating your defensive front. Just probably like everyone should be ideally if you have that luxury, right? So a little younger in each position. So you have a nice blend of young and veteran together, because that's actually a really good formula for success. So you probably could fortify at O-line. You probably could fortify just places of, the top 5 positions, right? Quarterback, you got that one now. You got left tackle, edge rusher, corner, and wide receiver. Those 5, you can change a little bit of the order: edge rusher over left tackle or corner over wide receiver. You can switch the order of those 2, but that's roughly how it works. And, being able to add depth to any of those 5 positions, those 4 marquee positions other than quarterback, because it's probably not necessary to do that quarterback right now, but, keeping that young and having rotations, like I think the thing we're going to see going forward is going to be more rotating of O lines just in general. Like a trend I think is coming, because you already see D lines rotating quite a bit. And as you see this defensive fronts rotating, well, O lines, it has long been considered not a luxury to rotate your O line. That's like a problem. I actually think that the opposite might be true. I think you're going to be able to start seeing maybe not your left tackle or your right tackle, but rotate in the guards, switch a little bit, and make it so that you're not necessarily like after really long drives, then the next series you have some fresh legs out there to keep your quarterback with at least 2.5 seconds or more to have behind the line, because you see what your guy can do when he's got just a teeny weeny bit of time. magic. So I think that's just something that, that's more of an overall thing. It's not necessarily for the Bills, because the Bills have the luxury of being able to play chess, right? They can move across the board if there's someone they really like in a position, or they don't need anything. So they could take best available and try to reinforce a depth. I'm sure their board is structured in a way that reflects both, because, it's always fun to, like, if maybe like those people that have Dolphins down there, like they maybe want this piece, maybe you just kind of snag that running back that they liked, and might as well, so it's always fun to just kind of play a little chess with people.
I like that, playing a little chess. We'll see if the Bills get the opportunity to do that at number 30. If there's anybody that's still hot on the board that's fallen to them that late in the first round. But what position do you think the Bills should go after in the first round, or who are some prospects that you think could fit on this team that'll still be available by the time number 30 comes?
Defensive front. I think you'll get an edge rusher, or maybe even Christian Barmore, which would be defensive tackle. He is nasty.
I love him.
If he lasts that long, that would be great. The Bills are sitting pretty because the developmental guys fit well with the scheme that they already have, meaning they're not going to be asked to do everything from day one. So that would be a really nice way to add depth, like Gregory Rousseau, Azeez Ojulari, Kwity Paye, one of those edge rushers that has a lot of upside. You could also look maybe I'm hearing Elijah Vera Tucker will not last that long. He's a guard at USC, but you could potentially, there's always, like I said, just stay in the trenches. I think if they're going to pick at 30, then they should stay trenches one side or the other, and kind of be flexible to take the best available one there. Cause there are a number of good tackles there. This is a strong tackle class. And then the edge prospects are pretty good too. But one thing to keep in mind is, in that first round, you do get the fifth rookie year on your deal. So the teams get an extra year of rookie salary base. So it might be advantageous depending on, obviously tackles get paid a lot, but really good edge rushers, they get paid a whole lot. So it might be smart to kind of target an edge rusher, because that's kind of one of the salary points that is pretty high. Same with left tackles, but sometimes you can finagle that one a little more. Edge rushers, that market seems to be high.
Yeah, really. And that fifth year option that you speak about, I mean, Brandon Beane held a press conference last week and he was like, hey, I'm going to be open to anything. I'll be open to staying at 30. I'll be open to moving up if we can. I'll be open to trading out of the first round if teams are calling, because that fifth year option could be attractive to some teams that maybe want to chase a quarterback who could be going later. So, and especially if there's a lot of edge rushers still on the board at 30 and you think, hey, I could trade out of the first round and get one of these guys a little bit higher in the second round. So where is your mind at in that, with like the possibilities that the Bills have to move around, whether it's up or down in that first round?
I would be surprised if they move too far up, just because it doesn't seem worth it to get rid of any draft equity later. I mean, maybe like a position or two, maybe if they really thought, but since they don't need a lot of things, right? Like they don't need a wide receiver. I think there could be a run on wide out sort of later. I think that with the Ravens picking at 31, obviously they gave up they're picking at 27 and 31. So they're obviously for Orlando Brown going to the Chiefs, they took the Chiefs pick at 31. That could make things interesting for the Bills in terms of a team trying to leapfrog, because I think people are looking at 31 and being like, the Ravens want to trade to get someone in for that quarterback purpose. So if another team thought, I can't make a deal with the Ravens, maybe I'll go try to make a deal with the Bills to hop up to get that to fifth year option for a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised even if a team like the Falcons made, and they're obviously wouldn't be a huge jump from the top of the second, because they're picking, fourth. So then they're picking 36th. So they could come back up those 6 slots, because they probably eventually are going to need to replace Matt Ryan. But I wouldn't advise them to do it with the number 4 pick, but because they have a lot of needs. But I think maybe hopping back up for like I'm hearing a lot of things about Davis Mills and Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond. I have my own theories on that, but it is smart to take a shot. And the Raiders, by the way, the Raiders could be moving, but the Raiders have I think 2 picks, like 79 and 80 are both their picks. So they could use one of those to get back up into the end of and they're always talking about quarterbacks, and they also do illogical things in the draft. So great. If the Bills can be the beneficiary of their like lack of logic, then that's great. Like, why not?
Yes, I feel like every year there's one pick where the Raiders have, and you're like, so what happened? What was the thinking on that one? It's always very interesting.
It's like since the beginning of time, right? Like the Raiders mess it up. I do a probability board, like who will be available at a specific position. And the Raiders always mess me up because it's like they put names in a hat, shake it around and pick one. And they're like, that's the one, right? Like, this is it. This is who we're picking. So
going into day 2, the Bills have a 2nd round and a 3rd round pick. And when you look at the depth in this year's draft, and I did an article on it, and you were a part of the article that just got released, and we spoke about the depth in this year's draft. I mean, where do you think the depth lives in this year's draft, and how do you think that can play into Buffalo's day 2 options?
Yeah, I think receiver is a good area of depth just overall. I think this is a strong offensive line class in terms of depth. I think there's a lot of corners here too that are really nice, and some are some scheme fit quarters. And your team does a great job of identifying those. So and I do think there's some good if you're talking 2nd and 3rd round, I do think there's some good running back value there. I understand that's not like the sexiest thing, and I'm an analytics person, so I don't always love picking running backs, but there's some good opportunities there. I think probably if like I said, Bills keep it in the trenches or maybe pick one of those corners. If by Friday you have defensive, offensive linemen of some sort, right, and a corner, like Bills fans would be pretty stoked.
I think they really would. And I love that the fan base this year, I feel like understands like, okay, number 30, number 61, number 93, they don't need to be the sexiest picks because we know we're not that far away from making it to the Super Bowl. And if you're going to draft an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman in the 1st and 2nd round, like go for it, because if that's what this team needs to get over the hump, then that's great. It doesn't need to be a flashy wide receiver or another flashy position. It can be in the trenches, because the trenches are super important. But with the scouting department and this coaching staff, I mean, you look at how this coaching staff, when I'm talking about the Buffalo Bills, has been able to develop some of these players. How do you see that playing into the draft, and maybe the Bills kind of not necessarily rolling the dice on a player, but choosing someone or drafting someone who is more of a raw talent, and knowing that the coaching department, the coaching staff is there to develop this guy, and they have been successful in doing that in the past.
I like so teams that win more often, they have what would be like, look, it's a bell curve like anything else. The more average players you have to have average players. It's just the law. It's the way the world works, right? But your average players, especially because we have a cap and a floor, we can't buy a team like the Yankees. They would buy things, right? So you have to have the average players in your system have to perform at above average levels. And that's where your coaching staff and front office, they've gotten that right. Because on some other teams, there are some scheme fits or some use fits and snap count fits that wouldn't make sense for their scheme, for what they're trying to do. So what I think the Bills do really well is between everything with the defense. Obviously, that's where the coach is. But the one that really surprised me was how good they are at picking wide receivers that fit what they're trying to do, and picking because Sean McDermott, you think defense, you think obviously, right? So and he has proven that the corners make sense, the middle of the defense makes sense. I almost don't want to call people safeties because they're so versatile that it's weird to just call them one position. Safety-ish, linebacker, corneries. How about that? That's their new names. So
I love
right,
it.
But being able to have that vision, you kind of expect that for defense. The thing that's interesting, there are a lot of developmental wide receivers in this draft that could be really helpful for the Bills that aren't going to be super sexy, but you saw it last year with your rookie. So it's our rookie. I'm a fan. So with
I
our
like
rookie,
it. Yeah.
right, perfect. So, but it helps when you have Stephon Diggs, but it also helps when you have Cole Beasley, and it also helps when you can figure out like this dynamic between the two, because maybe tight end isn't a position that has been really pass catching prowess, right? So maybe one of those situations where I think that the sum of the parts, like what they get from it, is more than the sum of the parts. So I wouldn't be surprised if you found there's a bunch of wide receivers that they went to smaller schools, or they're not household names by any stretch of the imagination. If you get some of those guys, would be great even. And that you may be like, well, but what's the fit? Whatever. Nope. I would trust them on that one for sure. Like, absolutely.
I like that. I know this team is loaded up with wide receivers, and we just grabbed Emmanuel Sanders in free agency, and Gabriel Davis, the rookie for us, had
our rookie. I mean, I guess not a rookie anymore.
He had a sensational first season, and learned how to play more than one position as a wide receiver. They tasked him with learning every single position, and we saw him move about the field and move around the field and do it with a way where you thought, okay, this kid knows the playbook. He knows the entire playbook. He gets it. His ceiling is so high, and they got him not in this first, second, or third round. This was someone that they got later on. And so I would love to see another wide receiver pop up on this team. I mean, load up that position, because that's what worked for the Buffalo Bills this past year. And that's what's going to work going forward. That's Josh Allen's game. We know it's going to be a passing game. Yes, you're going to have to use the run once in a while. You're going to have to use it to set up the pass. You're going to have to be able to go to the run. But the passing game is where this team, it's their bread and butter. It's where they succeed. It's how they win games. And to have more threats, more weapons at wide receiver is just going to help them accomplish that goal even more. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, I know you said corner, linebacker, safety esque players who can kind of move around. There's this whole defense, like this whole positionless player in the defense or for defense that we're seeing now become more popular in the NFL because of prospects and players that are coming out of college football who can rotate between positions and have a body type and the physical traits and the talent to be able to do that. I know you spoke before with me about the specialty linebackers in this year's draft class. How do you see maybe one of those guys fitting on this team if it's a day 2 pick or a day 3 pick, depending on where the depth lives for these types of players? But I guess just more positionless defenders. How do you see someone like that fitting on this Sean McDermott defense? I mean, I think it would be a great thing for this defense. And we already have kind of players like that who can move around and can flip from nickel corner to wherever you want to place them. And I think more of them could just help this defense grow even more.
You got to also think about it in the context of what's going to happen in your division, because you play them the most, right? So when you look to see like, all right, well, when I'm playing the Dolphins right now, they don't have their run game is not a shining point in their career, in their team right now. It's not a strength, right? The Jets, not a strength, right?
No,
not a strength of their team, right? And then you have to look at the Patriots. They can run. The Patriots are always a little scary and dangerous, and Cam Newton's obviously very strong on his feet, and that's who the presumable starter is now. But they're gonna figure out something to do with the passing. But this game is moving to passing, right? So first down, you see the percentage of passes on first down has increased every year for the past 3. We're seeing the most passing on first down, meaning the down where you don't know, that's the trickiest down. You can run or you can pass on first down. And since we're seeing an uptick in that, really what you need to do is figure out a way to be really like loaded and locked against the pass, especially on unobvious passing downs. So being able to create that scheme fit. There's a number of these, like, I'm going to call them interesting linebackers, like the Zaven Collins, I don't think that Micah Parsons will be available, and that is just I think he'll be gone by way before the Jamin Davis out of Kentucky, like really long, like I don't think he'll be available either. So you start to look at kind of a little further back. There's a guy, he plays at the Ohio State University. His name is Pete Werner.
Ooh.
Good old Pete. Like, he doesn't have the sexiest film. And this isn't because I'm from Michigan as Ohio State. Like, Pete, I want to play with Pete. You know why? Because Pete can stop the run. He can stop the pass. he's not like perfect, but he's solid. He is just solid. And so a guy like that could be really useful because of the floor for him is so high. He's not going to be doing these crazy, like he's not Darius Leonard running like, he's not going to get there across. He's not going to sideline in like 3 seconds flat. It's just not his game. But like you talk about who's a Bill, Pete Werner's a Bill. Pete Werner's definitely that. So that kind of thing could be an interesting one too. But I don't think it'll be the first, like, it's got to be a little bit, add some depth a little lower.
Yeah. Interesting. I like that. And one thing, I mean, when you're talking about what the division adds, I mean, you look at the Patriots, they added a bunch of tight ends in free agency, some big name tight ends, and the Bills struggled with covering a tight end last season. They had the most tight end yards allowed. And that's something that Matt Milano.
Pete's not going to let that happen.
Come on, Pete, come on to the team. And Matt Milano and Jordan Poyer are guys who would line up against a tight end. Matt Milano was injured for a good part of the season last year. And so they didn't have someone who could go in and be that guy who could drop into coverage and run with a tight end when you needed someone to, because we played against some teams who had some really dang good tight ends. And that's where they would run up the scoreboard and run up the stats on us was those big plays or those chunk plays to tight ends who could just move the ball down the field and pick up first down. So yeah, I definitely think some defensive players to add in that area could help this team, of course. And, the defensive front, like you already added, we can always have more players at that position, because you look at Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison, those are players who are getting older and players who their contracts are coming up with the Buffalo Bills soon. So you look at contracts too, and okay, how long are these players going to be on the team? Are we re-signing them? Maybe not. So do you want to add some guys in that area who may be cheaper? Because by the way, Josh Allen is going to get a contract extension at some point, and that's going to be a pretty penny.
I mean, yeah, it should be. So
when you look at the draft, just overall, not looking at the Buffalo Bills, because I mean, there could be some surprises at number 30 in the first round, right? Based on like who fans think, could get drafted to Buffalo or what the mock drafts has said over the last couple months, which by the way, Travis
mock drafts don't put
has been mocked to us the most. I've tracked over 140 mock drafts since January, and Travis Etienne is the name that has been mocked to Buffalo the most. And there's some people who really love Travis Etienne. But I mean, some fans are probably like, Etienne's got to come to Buffalo. He's, I really like him, but so fans have, I want this player, I want that player. He will or he will not come to Buffalo. But I see you shaking your head at Etienne to Buffalo. Give me the lowdown in your mind.
Well, to be honest with you, first off, Etienne means Stephen in French, just in case you're wondering. Number two, I don't know why I know that, but
amazing.
As Travis Stephen. So, I think sometimes with mock drafts, especially like early ones, like in January, sometimes, especially when you get down to number 30, people cheat off each other's tests. Not me, but I think so. Just keep that in mind. Not to say ETN isn't great, but I think it'd be very, very hard for the Bills to pass up on, an edge rusher that's really good at that position. So, and I think there will be one or two available. So I don't know if I think the value for running back there, when you got Josh Allen and those legs, I don't know. Not my thing.
Saying, don't do it. Don't do it, Brandon. Don't even try.
Don't even
Pick up an edge rusher. But beyond the surprises that can happen at number 30, what surprises do you think could happen in the first round? When you look at where some teams are picking, when you look at what the heck the 49ers may do, when you look at how far maybe some big name players could fall, what are some surprises that you wouldn't be shocked by if some things happened?
Number one, I don't think there's any way that the Niners are taking either Mac Jones or Trey Lance. I think it is Justin Fields. I think that's still a smokescreen. I don't believe any of these rumors. Number two, I don't think Julio Jones is leaving the Falcons. I think that's a smokescreen too, because I think people are like, oh, I want Kyle Pitts. I'm going to have to trade up to get the Falcons to get ahead of the Bengals because the Bengals are taking blah, 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 blah. They all want trade equity because the Falcons are a lot of players away from being good, especially on defense. Number 3, I don't think the Patriots take a quarterback. Now, if they do, maybe it's a trade with Jimmy Garoppolo back with the Niners. And I think they're, trying to erode the value they'd have to pay for that trade because come draft day, like, Jimmy's going to be like this redundant factor. And what are you going to get for him? Probably not a first, probably not what could you get for him then? That's interesting. So I don't think the Patriots draft him. I think the Raiders do something preposterous again. That's not really surprising at all. I think the Lions mess it up again. That's how they roll. And who else? I think we see a giant contract from Aaron Rodgers get signed before Thursday, like giant, a massive contract. And I think we see the Packers, I think that Aaron Rodgers becomes the highest paid quarterback ahead of the draft, and the Packers move up a couple of spots to get a wideout for him.
Wow. I like
That's
this.
my spice.
All right. Let's see if it unfolds here beginning on Thursday night. What is your gut feeling on the Buffalo Bills and what they can do this season, knowing what the AFC East looks like, knowing, who's the Patriots quarterback going to be? Are they going to be a talented team this year? Does all the money they threw into free agency, is that going to translate onto the field? I mean, are the Jets going to be able to win more games with supposedly Zach Wilson when they need so much other help? Is Tua the guy? Are they going to be able to find weapons to put around him that make him be a quarterback in the NFL that can play long-term? I mean, there's so many things that are up in the air in the AFC East right now. And thankfully the Buffalo Bills are pretty dang solid in a lot of areas. So what's your gut feeling on what the Bills can do and can accomplish this year?
Think that I'm going to go buy some snow pants. I live in Southern California now, and I am weak when it comes to being cold. I don't like being cold, not one bit. But I'm going to go buy some snow pants because I expect maybe my first tailgate will be in January in Orchard Park. Just saying, maybe my first Bills tailgate.
I love it. Come on, you're invited. It's going to be freezing. Right. You're going to need snow pants now.
Get the sale. Get the sale right now. The end of your sale from now, so that next January I'll have them.
Yeah, get the snow pants that you have batteries in them that are heated snow pants. Everything, some really nice boots. You got to get the hot warmer hands and for your feet. So come on out to Highmark Stadium because it's going to be a fun season for this team. And hopefully by January or whenever we can have a lot of fans in the stands and it can be, one big party like it was in 2019.
Very exciting.
Cynthia, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the pod and explain all of these prospects and kind of lay out this NFL draft for us. I mean, there's so much to anticipate, so much to expect, but so much that is unexpected that is going to happen as, we are on the clock with number 1 overall and we go on from there and everything that could happen over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So thank you for your expertise, especially with the analytics. Love getting to read everything that you put out there and helping us people who aren't the mathletes like you are feel like we know some stuff when it comes to numbers.
Perfect. You can know all the stuff. And I'm glad, I'll tell all my fellow Bills fans any math they want to know whenever they want.
Heck yeah, guys. That was Cynthia Frelund, your Buffalo Bills fan, Buffalo Bills export, Bills Mafia fan, everything, everything surrounding the Bills. To all who are joining in, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Bills Pod Squad presented by the New York Lottery. Stick with us because we will be back later in the week with Bills owner and president Kim Pegula and one of your newest Buffalo Bills.